This is a podcast in which we explore the intersection of mythology, folklore, and modern life. My name is Dimitri, and I'll be your companion on this journey of discovery. Each episode, we'll follow routes charted in the old stories and let them lead us into forgotten currents and toward new shores. Welcome to the Inward Sea. Hello, and welcome to the Inward Sea. If this is your first time here, my name is Dimitri, and you've stepped into the second episode of our series following Theseus on his long road to Athena. Last time, we lingered at the beginning of the story, his strange conception, his boyhood fascination with Heracles, and the moment, when he was about 16, that he rolled aside a giant stone to discover what his father, King Aegeus of Athena, had hidden for him: a pair of sandals and a sword, tokens of his identity and readiness. If you missed that part of the story, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to it first. It lays the groundwork for what happens now. In just a moment, we're going to dive back in where we left off last time. Theseus, a strong 16-year-old youth, has just moved a rock and uncovered the tokens left for him, and he's about to set out from Troezen northward towards Epidaurus. And there, before the famous amphitheater was ever built, the boy meets his first trial, a limping bandit who may or may not have been a cyclops, waiting with a bronze club to smash the heads of travelers. Today's episode is all about bandit spotting, and it's a kind of beginner's guide to shadow work. Here's how we'll walk through this episode together. First, I'll tell the story itself, and then we'll draw close to the symbols. We'll ask questions like, what does it mean that the hero takes the road, that the first enemy he meets is a bandit, and that the weapon of this bandit is a club of solid bronze? We'll use those images to explore something that Jung called a psychological complex, those knotted bundles of emotion and instinct that rise up from the unconscious and seize us. After that, I'll give you 4 practical steps that you can try when you face your own inner bandits. And finally, I'll leave you with 3 reflection questions, prompts that you can return to again and again in your journaling to help you do the hero's work modeled by Theseus. So yes, this podcast is called The Inward Sea, but today, strap on your sandals because we're traveling over land. And yet, even here on the rocky road through the wilderness, if you listen carefully, you'll notice that the tides of the unconscious are never far away. The next morning, as Eos flung wide the gates of dawn and Helios laid the first golden beams across the land, Theseus was already awake. He strapped the sandals, unearthed yesterday from beneath the great stone, to his feet. They weren't his, but they fit well enough. The sword hung at his side, plain scabbard and plain baldric, no frills, but its weight spoke of destiny. As the sun climbed further into the sky, his mother and grandfather gave him the usual mix of hugs, cautions, and pleas to take the boat. Always the boat that would have whisked him across the Saronic Gulf in safety. But Theseus had made up his mind. Boats were for merchants. Heroes walked. Heroes faced the road. Heroes, he thought, were made in dust and danger, not in comfort. So he set out north, out from Troezen, each step setting off tiny rounds of applause as the soles of his sandals ground over the loose gravel. The road carried him through olive-dotted slopes and cypress-lined valleys till he came near Epidaurus. And there, leaning against a rock as though the whole world were his to lean upon, stood a man. A terrifyingly enormous man. Some said he was the son of Hephaestus, the god of fire and forge. Others swore he was a cyclops, one glaring eye blazing from the center of his forehead. Everyone agreed on two things. He limped, and he carried a club of bronze so heavy it seemed the earth itself winced beneath its weight. This, of course, was Periphetes, bandit, road scourge, skull smasher, known to the locals as Corynetes, the club bearer.
"You there, boy!"
he bellowed.
"This is my road. All who wish to pass must come to me to pay the toll."
"And what toll is that, sir?" Theseus replied, with studied politeness, keeping his distance.
"Come closer, I'll show you,"
growled Periphetes. So Theseus did. Slowly, steadily, sandals crunching on the gravel, the boy walked toward the brute. It was like approaching a very large, very irritable bull that had also been given a weapon and a bad temper. The outlaw leaned on his club, one eye glinting, lips twitching, drool gathering in the corners of his mouth. He looked delighted, which is never a reassuring look on someone with murder in mind. "That's a fine-looking club you've got," said Theseus, keeping his voice light, as if complimenting a neighbor's choice of garden rake.
"Oh, it is,"
said Periphetes, lovingly caressing the bronze as if it were a cat.
"It is solid bronze, forged by my father, Hephaestus himself."
"Really?" Theseus cocked his head. "Funny, it looks awfully light, almost like wood with a bronze veneer. My mother has jewelry like that, bronze outside, but nothing inside."
"What?"
roared Periphetes, his face flushed crimson, his single eye bulged like a boiled onion.
"Overlay! Overlay! You dare insult me! Here! Try it yourself!" And
with a snarl, he thrust the club forward, shoving its weight into Theseus's arms. The youth staggered. Gods, it was heavy, preposterously so. His knees wobbled, his elbows screamed, his spine groaned like an old ship's mast in a storm. For a moment, you'd have thought he'd collapse into the dirt then and there. Periphetes' lips trembled, though whether from eagerness or simple slobber it was hard to tell. This wasn't the way things usually went, but seeing the youth struggling against the weight of the club that would soon crush him was delightful.
"Oh, you're right,"
Theseus puffed, cheeks glowing red.
"It really is solid bronze."
"Yes,"
gloated Periphetes, chest swelling.
"Forged by the skill of my father."
"Well then,"
said Theseus, brightening suddenly,
"let's see what happens if I do this."
and with a shocking burst of strength, the boy swung the great lump of metal back over his head and brought it down. The sound it made was very final. Bronze met bone, and bone lost. And what had previously been held securely inside Periphetes' large head was now spectacularly and messily outside. The blow rang out across the hills, and with it a flock of birds erupted skywards, wheeling in a frenzy as though they themselves carried off the echo of the strike. They scattered, black specks against the bright sky, and their wings bore the first whispers of a story that would be told for thousands of years to come. To anyone watching, the ease with which Theseus wielded the weapon would have seemed impossible. Divine blood, perhaps, or maybe just a young man's years of training finally tested. Either way, the club was now his. He hefted it from hand to hand, testing its balance. It was heavy, yes, but it was his. By the time Helios had summited the heavens and begun his slow and reluctant descent towards the western hills, Theseus was on the road again, the great bronze club slung across his shoulders. Behind him, rumors scattered like seeds on the wind, taking root in rafters, curling into campfire talk, and drifting skyward on plumes of smoke, until even the stars seemed to hum with the tale. The stories moved faster than he could walk. The outlaw of Epidaurus was dead. Ahead of him, the rumors swirled and eddied and pooled in villages, swelling into fast-flowing streams that would reach Athena before he did. The youth of Troezen was gone, and in his place marched a new figure, a young hero who bore a club of pure bronze. So, that's the story. Taken at face value, it's rather simple. Boy meets giant, giant tries to smash boy's head in, boy smashes giant's head in instead. But when we look a little closer at the symbols involved, there's a lot more going on under the hood of this seemingly simple scene from a myth. The hero and the road. In mythology, the hero is the one who tames the wild. Heroes don't simply slay monsters, they take chaotic, untamed, and often primal forces and turn them into something that serves life. In myth and legend, heroes are celebrated because their actions stabilize and order the world in a way that makes civilization possible. Psychologically speaking, this is the task of the ego. The ego, like the hero, isn't meant to destroy the unconscious, but to engage whatever emerges from it, wrestle with it, and integrate its energies, making them useful in our lives. That's why the archetype of the hero is so enduring. It isn't a role model to imitate, but a pattern or a map of how consciousness can engage with what lies beyond it. To better understand this, it helps to shift the way we think about the ego. For many, the word ego suggests pride or arrogance, but that's not what we mean here. In this context, the ego is simply the part of the psyche that says, I. As soon as we label one thing I, we automatically label everything else not I. The ego is the intermediary between the external world we experience through our senses, the things we call not I, and the inner world we think of as I, which we experience through psyche. Sometimes the ego forgets this task and assumes that it is the whole of who we are. But all we need to do is recall a dream or notice an unconscious impulse surfacing to realize that there's far more to the psyche than what the ego perceives. The ego is a small flare, a light of consciousness inside a much larger psychic field. We're never fully aware of our whole self. That self, with a capital S, is infinitely more expansive, containing the whole range of what we are and what we could be. To grapple with this concept of the relationship between the ego and the self and the external world, perhaps the image of a biological cell can be helpful. A cell survives by exchanging nutrients and energy across its membrane. The psyche works in the same way. The ego is the permeable membrane, the cell wall, mediating between the inner and outer worlds. From the outside, it takes in stimulus and translates it into experience, memory, and meaning. From the inside, it takes raw psychic energy, fear, desire, imagination, and gives it form in words, choices, and actions. Its task is not to silence what rises from beyond its perceptual boundaries on either side, but to meet it, wrestle with it, and transform it into something useful. And this is where we need to be clear. The unconscious is just a word, another mythological image for everything that lies outside the ego's awareness, but still belongs to the universe. It exists in two directions at once: inwardly, in forgotten memories, instincts, and hidden creativity, and outwardly, in the unpredictable events and encounters of the world around us. The unconscious is not locked somewhere in the basement of the mind. It is the wilderness itself, both inner and outer. This is why myth is so useful. The hero gives us a way to imagine what the ego is meant to do. Just as Theseus doesn't stay in the safety of Troezen, but takes the dangerous road through the wilderness, the ego cannot simply rest in what is already known. Its task is to walk into the unknown, the unconscious, where the path is unclear and where fears and impulses leap out, where every step feels a little bit risky. That work of exchange and integration, of making more of what is unconscious into consciousness, is what Carl Jung called individuation. The hero's work is not about conquest for its own sake. It's about transformation. What is raw, chaotic, and threatening must be faced, not ignored, and turned into something that can serve life. The ego's heroic labor is the same: to meet what rises from the shadow, wrestle with it, and carry it into consciousness. When we begin to see our lives this way, our struggles take on a different meaning. The resistance we feel, the habits that pull us off course, the fears that hold us back, these are not signs of failure or that we're headed in some wrong direction. They are the bandits on our road. They're the psychological complexes that emerge when we move toward growth. And the only way we can go forward is by going through them. Theseus' journey from Troezen to Athena is a picture of this process. He could have sailed there easily, safe from danger. In fact, Plutarch tells us that Theseus might have traveled to Athena by sea without any trouble, suffering no outrage at the hands of those robbers. But he didn't. He chose the road through the wilderness, knowing it was filled with bandits. In an earlier passage, Plutarch adds that Theseus, of his own choice, when no one compelled him, but when it was possible for him to reign without fear in Troezen, reached out after great achievements. In other words, he could have remained safe, even powerful perhaps, in Troezen. But instead, he chose the path of trials. Walking that path means coming face to face with aspects of ourselves we've perhaps never had to face in the tame and secure setting we're leaving behind. Often, they look like monsters or cyclopean bandits with bronze clubs. Facing them and integrating the energy they hoard is the inner hero work we're called to whenever we try to make outer changes in our lives. Growth demands a shedding of old identities. But those old identities don't always go willingly or quietly. The complex image, Periphetes and the bronze club. Like Theseus, when we step into the untamed regions of growth within ourselves, beyond the known and the comfortable, the first thing we often encounter is resistance. Not from the outside world, but from something inside ourselves. And that's exactly what Periphetes represents. The path from Troezen to Athena runs through wild terrain, much like the inner wilderness we all must pass through when we begin any serious change. In myth, this in-between space is where the bandits and the outlaws wait. In psychology, it's where complexes reside. Periphetes, the so-called club-bearer or Corynetes, is a powerful image of a psychological complex. He's not a random thought or mood, but a whole splinter psyche, a semi-autonomous bundle of thoughts, emotions, reactions, and memories, all orbiting around an unresolved emotional charge. A complex often originates from a wound or unintegrated experience, something we go through but don't fully process at the time. And like Periphetes, a complex often lies in wait by the roadside of change, ready to strike the moment we try grow past its threshold. He is lame, like the god Hephaestus, who, according to a story found in Apollodorus' library, attempted to violate Athena. The goddess came to him because she wanted weapons, but Hephaestus wanted a whole lot more, and when she rejected his overtures and fled, he gave limping pursuit. Periphetes is sometimes said to be the son of Hephaestus. This mythic genealogy invites us to think of him not simply as a brute, but as an uncontrolled instinctual force born from a creative lineage. Wounded wild things can often turn violent. And this is the case with our own inner bandits too. Periphetes doesn't stalk his prey. He lies in wait. And that's what complexes do. They don't hunt us down. We meet them when we, in an effort to grow beyond our limitations, walk past them. When we step forward into growth, something old and wounded inside of us flares up and demands our attention again. Those intimidating inner voices that brandish clubs of fear, shame, or self-doubt stand at critical thresholds along our path to growth, telling us that we're not ready, or that we're too broken, or perhaps that we're just simply not good enough to be who we want to become. This is the bandit's voice. It's not the voice of truth, but of trauma. It's not a guide, but a guard stationed on the threshold of our transformation. Now you see, Theseus doesn't just defeat the bandit. He takes ownership of the bandits' club. He doesn't run from the encounter, but after having dispatched the bandit, he takes the bronze club as his own weapon. He claims what was once used against him and carries it forward with him. And that action, that's the real initiation. It's an act of alchemy, transmuting the corrupted energy of a complex that has been exiled to the wilderness of the unconscious, either intentionally or unintentionally, and integrates it into conscious awareness. You see, the club is not just a weapon, it's a symbol of unconscious power. It's what knocks us sideways when we're overwhelmed by fear, shame, or self-doubt. It's the sudden rush of effect, that thump of emotion that seems to swing out of nowhere. It is emotional energy, raw, instinctual energy. And this is the key. The club is made of bronze. That's the same material as the sword that Aeneas hid under the rock back in Troezen. Both of these are weapons. Both are bronze. They have the same origin, but they have different forms. The sword is crafted by awareness and skill. It's designed to suit the needs of the ego, which, as we mentioned earlier, is the ordering and organizing principle of the psyche. It cuts cleanly. It requires skill to use. The club, on the other hand, is blunt. It requires force, not finesse. And yet, both come from the same psychic forge. Hephaestus, remember, was the smith of the gods. And the club and the sword were both made in his fires. And so too with us. Our fear, our courage, our rage, and our resolve, they're all made of the same stuff. It's how we shape and use them that makes the difference. So the club is affect, that intense feeling that hasn't yet been reflected upon. But when Theseus lifts it, something changes. He doesn't just survive the blow. He's able to reclaim the source of that blow and make it a tool of transformation for himself. So this then is the hidden teaching here. The things that threaten to hurt us can also empower us. When we integrate the energy locked in a complex, we become stronger, not in spite of our wounds, but because of them. So ask yourself, What clubs lie by the roadside of your own story? What weapons have perhaps been used against you but are waiting to be claimed, cleaned, and carried? Not so that we can hurt others with them, but so that we can protect what we are becoming. This is Theseus' first act of true heroism. Not really the killing of the bandit, but the transformation that he undergoes as a result of that encounter. Becoming a club owner. Okay, so we've spent some time unpacking the symbols. We've spoken about the hero, the road, the bandit Periphetes, the club, and what these things could symbolize for us in our own growth and development. But how do we do the work that Theseus models for us in real life? How do we take the lessons of Theseus and Periphetes and turn it into something we can actually put into practice? Here are 4 easy steps to help. Step 1. Bandit spotting. Theseus knew the road was dangerous. He didn't set out naively. He knew that there would be bandits between Troezen and Athens. In the same way, when we step onto the path of growth, we can expect resistance. And when we encounter it, we must remind ourselves that it's not a sign that something has gone wrong or that we have chosen the wrong path. It is an important part of the journey. Knowing that we will encounter resistance allows us to start noticing its signs before we get within striking distance. Perhaps it's a tightness in the chest, or the urge to procrastinate, or the still small voice that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" Imposter syndrome. When we're able to identify the signs that something which may have stopped us before might be lurking around a corner, we're able to prepare a strategy for coming into confrontation with it. Spotting the bandit early means we don't get ambushed. Step 2. Outing the outlaw. Our complexes retain much of their power simply because we do not want to acknowledge them. To apply the lessons that we learn from the model of Theseus, we need to really highlight the fact that Theseus doesn't look away from Periphetes, and he doesn't ignore the weapon in the outlaw's hand. He names what he's facing and engages with it. For us, that looks like saying, yes, this is fear, or yes, this is shame, or yes, this is self-doubt. To out the outlaw means to consciously name 2 things. And it doesn't matter in which order we do this. But it's important that we identify 2 key elements when we start to feel the stirring of something that might later try stop us. We must name the bandit, that's the one that speaks to us, and their weapon, that's the emotional or energetic center from which they speak. This might look like acknowledging, yes, this sudden urge to clean the bathroom and reorganize all my books is procrastination. And I think it's suddenly appearing now because sitting down to script the next episode of this podcast feels scary. In this step, a detailed analysis is not that important. It's more important to look inward with brutal honesty and to say things as they come to your attention. You may even want to write down your ideas without worrying about whether they are true or false, but just explore why it suddenly seems like a better idea to do whatever else you can than to take the next step in your journey. In case you can't tell, the bathroom cleaning thing is something that comes up a lot for me. There's nothing like the smell of chemicals and some good scrubbing to placate self-doubt and the voice that howls imposter every time I sit down to write. And on the plus side, a sparkling bathroom is a lovely thing. Whether or not it needs to be scrubbed down every 2 days is up for debate, I suppose. The real trick is to try and spot this as it is happening, sort of like catching the outlaw in the act and taking a moment to trap it in a name. This gives it a form and allows you to take whatever countermeasures you like. Outing the outlaw or giving it a name and naming the club, even if it's not complete or entirely accurate at first, is powerful because it drags the complex out of the shadows and into the light of consciousness. Once we can see the complex, we're already much safer, and now, bound by a name, the complex is already less powerful. This opens the way for the next step in the process. Step 3. Questioning the club. This next step is where we gain further clarity, and it's one in which a little bit of journaling really goes a long way. Theseus doesn't see the bandit, recognize him as Periphetes with the bronze club, and then decide to take another route. After naming the bandit and the weapon, Theseus engages the outlaw in conversation, still from a safe distance. Theseus is not aggressive. He's well aware of the fact that Periphetes is dangerous, and so he keeps his distance, but he engages with him almost playfully. Our hero allows the brute to believe that the balance of power is still resting securely with him and his club. See how Theseus speaks to Periphetes. He doesn't attack him. He doesn't declare his intention to rid the world of his evil. Rather, he begins to question the club. He acknowledges that the club looks strong and heavy, but he also voices doubt about it. Is it really bronze? Could it be nothing more than plated wood? For you and I, this gives us a wonderful technique for dealing with unhelpful complexes as we identify them, and it's something remarkably close to practices in cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy. Many of us might be tempted to dig into why the Periphetes on the road is stationed right here at this bend in the road. Unpacking the history and origins of the bandits we encounter on our roads might be interesting, but it doesn't really do much to help us. It is enough most of the time to recognize that this bandit is bent on hijacking us. This particular complex and the behaviors that mollify it are not helpful to us right now. How and why they are here is less important than that the road is cleared and the threat that they pose is dealt with. It may very well be that in the past, these outlaws were defensive features, that they helped us cope with difficult situations. Perhaps they were guarding a particular part of our hearts, or set up to clear the road of other greater threats. But right now, in this situation, the outlaws are hoarding two valuable resources that we need in order to grow: the bronze club and access to the road that will lead us to a more integrated state. To question the club does not mean to attack it. It does not mean to try and avoid it. Rather, it means treating it with curiosity. If we've named the outlaw perfectionism and the club it wields self-doubt, now we have the space to ask what's really at stake if we proceed down the road. As long as we are physically safe, we have the space and the ability to explore what else that club might be. Perhaps something else is hidden beneath that familiar veneer. You see, curiosity slows the swing of the club, and even a pause of a few seconds can shift the power. Once you stop being the target, you start becoming the one who can choose what to do with that energy instead. Step 4. Who's the boss? The amazing thing about this process is that sometimes it can happen in a flash. Sometimes it really is just the act of recognizing, naming, and questioning that almost immediately causes a reclamation of the inner psychic energies that seem to oppose us. Other times it takes longer and involves more work. Even if this is the case, the same 3 steps, repeated whenever they are needed, will ultimately yield the same result. At some point, the outlaw will stop being the boss. The complex, that bundle of fear, shame, or instinct, only gets to terrorize the world so long as it remains exiled, unacknowledged, and lurking in the shadows. But when the ego does its hero work, when we see it, name it, and dispatch the voice at its core, something changes. The outlaw is disarmed, and the club becomes ours. And the energy once tied up in anxiety, shame, or avoidance becomes a resource, something that we can carry consciously and with purpose. This is what Carl Jung meant by integration. The complex doesn't vanish, it becomes a part of us, no longer an outlaw, but an ally. That's the moment the answer to who's the boss shifts. It's not the bandit, not the club, not the shadow. It's the archetypal self, the totality of who you are and what you can become, standing at the center and carrying what once threatened to crush you. When Theseus defeats Periphetes, he doesn't just remove an obstacle from the road, he takes the club. He claims the very weapon that was meant to destroy him. And that's the final piece for us. Because those raw instincts, the things that have been holding us back, they're not garbage to be thrown out. You see, both the sword and the club are made from the same psychic energy. It is the task of the ego, illustrated through the archetypal hero appearing in stories that we've collected for thousands of years, to bring that psychic material out of the shadow and make it available to serve the whole self in the grand project of living well in this world. No matter how old or how successful any of us are, we've all met our Periphetes. And he's not a once-off encounter. Every time we step into a new season of growth, he's there again, waiting just past the first bend in the road. Of course, not everything that doesn't work out in life is because of an inner Periphetes. Sometimes circumstances simply don't align, and if that's what you've gone through, I'm sorry. I know that feeling. I just hope you're not beating yourself up with that bronze club of shame, fear, or self-doubt. If you are, then maybe you're right in the thick of it right now. And if so, take heart. That bandit can't chase you. You can step back, catch your breath, and begin naming the complex. And if you're not in that spot right now, I'm sure you can remember a time when something you've cared about never took off. Not because of logistics, but because you faltered. Perhaps you were ambushed by that outlaw voice and its heavy club. If you've known that moment, then you too are in a great place to start doing the hero work. Having walked even a little way down the road gives you some foresight. Next time, you'll know what waits around that first bend. So, whether you are right now in the thick of it or remembering a past encounter, here are 3 questions to carry with you as you prepare for the next time Periphetes steps out of the shadows in your life. Question 1. What signs, symptoms, or sensations appear in my body when I draw near to my Periphetes? When Theseus chose the wilderness road, he had to read the terrain. Broken branches, sudden silences, faint tracks. These signs warned him that a bandit might be waiting just ahead. In the same way, your body gives you signals when a complex is near. A tight chest or a heavy feeling in your gut, sudden sleepiness or the restless urge to clean a bathroom. These are the small environmental signs that a bandit may be lurking nearby. Our senses usually face outward, but the body is also a landscape in which the psyche leaves its tracks. Paying attention here matters. When the inner work feels too abstract, tending to the physical symptoms, for example, slowing your breath or grounding your feet or shifting your posture, can turn the ambush into a moment of awareness. Spotting the bandit in your body through physical sensations is like catching sight of him on the road. It gives you an upper hand before he swings the club. Question 2. If I gave this outlaw a voice, what would it say? Every complex speaks. Sometimes it whispers, "Who do you think you are?" Sometimes it shouts, "Turn back." Instead of shutting it down, try meeting it with curiosity. Imagine pulling up a chair across from this limping bandit, his club on the ground for a moment, and let him talk. What words would tumble out? What are the feelings that fuel them? If you're not familiar with the practice of active imagination, this might feel strange at first. But basically, you're just sitting with the complex, something that is already inside of yourself, and giving it space to come to consciousness without needing to engage you in the way that it normally does. By approaching it in this way, you're essentially changing the rules of engagement and allowing that part of your psyche to speak in a way in which it is not normally heard. After working with question 1, hopefully you've been able to identify some sensations or feelings in your body that tell you the bandit is near. Once you've got them, you can start gently asking them questions. This is an imaginary conversation in which you allow your imagination to speak for those emotional impulses and instincts within you. Don't try and rationalize the results or make the conversation sound too clever. Just pay attention to what is there. During the process, a lot of nonsense is going to come out as well. Not everything is going to be useful or particularly insightful, but every now and then, something will click. You'll discover resonant moments in which the outlaw speaks your truth in ways you've never heard it expressed before. The very best of these moments will feel like an exciting click, a flash of insight, something that is surprising. And it's through those moments that your relationship with both the outlaw and its club will begin to change. This second question is not a once-off journaling prompt. It's a practice of repetition and the building of a relationship that has been left untended for a long time. Stick with it for a while until you get that flash of insight or that surprising click. That's the sign that you're ready to move on. Question 3. How might I reclaim this club? Once you've heard the outlaw's voice, the work shifts because the club, the raw energy that gives his words weight, isn't just his anymore. Actually, it's yours. Picture it for a moment. That heavy bronze club, once used to smash you down, what if you could take it into your own hands? The weight might not change, but its meaning would. Instead of a threat, it would become an energy that you could direct in your own life. The club is no longer raised against you, it rests in your grip. You choose how to hold it, when to lift it, and when to set it down. That's the turning point at which what once overwhelmed you now becomes something that you can wield. As a journal prompt, ask yourself, if I could claim this club, what would it look like in my life? Instead of stopping me in my tracks or shutting me down, how can I use this fear, anxiety, or doubt to improve whatever it is that I'm trying to create in myself or in the world around me? And what would it feel like in my body to wield that same energy with purpose instead of being crushed by it? Before we close, I really hope you'll take some time to sit with the 3 questions from today's episode. Working with them is a powerful way to practice the first 3 steps we talked about: spotting a bandit's voice before it hijacks you, outing the outlaw by identifying the internal narrative and its emotional charge, and beginning to question the club, not with fear, but with imagination and curiosity. That last one is subtle but essential. The second question especially can open the door for you to meet your instinctive reactions with a little more awareness and a little less reactivity. This is the shift from being gripped by a complex to engaging it. In my classes and workshops, I always emphasize that these 4 steps and 3 questions aren't a one-time fix. They're tools you can return to again and again with each new challenge, or even reflecting on past events when you feel stuck or overwhelmed. Over time, this process helps you relocate the center of power within a complex. It gently loosens the grip that the shadow, or what Jung called the inferior function, has on your choices, and it makes more of your own strength available to you. I hope this practice brings as much clarity and freedom to you as it continues to bring to me. In the next episode, we'll follow Theseus further along the Longissima Via, the long road of initiation. 5 more bandits lie ahead still, each one a kind of gatekeeper, each one a test. The very next one is one that follows naturally as the second step in the process of claiming the bronze club we spoke about today. Theseus must soon face Sinis, the pine bender, who will challenge us with the image of being pulled in two directions at once, and with the necessity of holding the tension between opposites, a lesson that feels particularly timely considering our current climate of division and polarization. As you move forward on your own road of growth and initiation, please remember that Periphetes is not a once-off opponent. He doesn't vanish after just one defeat. Each time we set out on a new path of growth, he is there again, waiting around that first bend in the road. And that's why the 3 reflection prompts that I've given you in this episode aren't meant to be one-time exercises. Use them a few times over with different situations in your life, or even by looking back at the moments in the past where you may have stumbled or succumbed to an outlaw like him. The more often you revisit the questions and the steps we spoke about today, the more you'll begin to notice the signs of Periphetes showing up in real time. And that awareness gives you the chance to do the hero's work, to spot the bandit in time, to out the outlaw, to question the club, and finally, to reclaim its strength as your own. If you'd like to have these prompts written down for journaling or reflection, you can find them in the transcript for this episode on Substack. Just head over to my website at www.theinwardsea.com. That's www.theinwardsea.com, and you'll find the link under the Essays and Transcripts heading in the menu. Thank you for spending your time with me on this journey. If today's story or reflection gave you something useful, it would mean a great deal for me if you could rate the episode or leave a short review. Those small gestures help to carry this work further, just as the story of Theseus spread faster than his own footsteps. And if you know of someone who might be stepping out on their own path of growth, or is perhaps going through a bit of an initiation of their own at the moment, please share this episode with them. Stories are meant to be carried and passed along. Until next time, travel well and keep walking your road. Athena is waiting. My name is Dimitri, and you've been listening to The Inward Sea.